Welcome to the Takeoff Podcast, the go-to construction podcast for construction professionals seeking inspiration, education, or motivation for the next steps in their career. Each Monday, you'll be joined by me, Mick, Donaghy, Managing Director of Gedden Executive Recruitment and a respected name from the industry. A construction leader, a business owner, or someone in the thick of the action. The whole premise of this podcast is for you to get something from it. An idea, a connection, a mentor, whatever it is, I hope you get it. And I hope you enjoy the show. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of The Takeoff. Today we are joined by Rob Lineker. Rob is Director of Dei One Projects, a specialist construction contractor who champions diversity in the construction sector by creating all-inclusive work environments throughout their projects. Specializing in a range of bespoke fit-outs, interior and refurb projects, Dei One Projects operates nationwide and offers comprehensive construction services from conception right through to completion. Rob is also the founder of Alc Free Life, supporting those embracing an alcohol-free lifestyle. And today, this is a really interesting podcast for me because I have recently decided to stop drinking. Offline, myself and Rob have been discussing the benefits and what we've really enjoyed over the last year, 2 years, in terms of what we have decided to do. And Rob, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And we're going to do something a bit different today. We're going to talk about how you got involved in construction. And then we're just going to have a bit more of an open conversation. You're going to ask me questions. I'm going to ask you questions. Yeah. And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad I reached out when I saw your posts. And I've been watching the Takeoff or listening to Takeoff since it started. It's a pleasure to be here.
Rob, tell me how you got involved in construction initially. What was the sort of origin story for yourself, Rob?
Yeah, so I'm a Ballarat boy, country Victoria. You either go to uni or you do a trade. So I left year 10 in 2003 and started an apprenticeship as a sparky. So I'm actually a sparky by trade. Then I flew around the country installing operating theatres for an American corporation. And in 2016, I went to the dark side and went to Shape Australia as a head contractor. I was with Shape for 6 years, project managing, estimating, project coordinating. And I started up Shape Plus in Victoria in 2020. And in 2022, I decided to start my own fit out company. Got my builder's license and here we are. We're operating in Melbourne and Brisbane, but we've got jobs in Tasmania and all over the East Coast. So
awesome. Tell me about maybe the origin story of Dei One. What made you want to sort of start your own business?
Yeah, if we want to leave time for the alcohol stuff, we probably don't talk about this too long because I'll take a year off. But I guess being in the position to start my own business, I really wanted to do something different, I guess. And passion of mine is supporting diversity in construction, in particular women, and promoting, supporting women in construction. So I kind of thought that why don't we just go all out and do it properly instead of, talking the talk, we'll walk the walk as well. So Dei One, it's diversity, equity, inclusion. It's in our name. We can't escape it. We can't pretend it's not there. We hire predominantly women. I think we've got 80% at the moment. We just want to run sites differently, that women tradies can come to our sites and expect a high level of support, and that's what we provide. So we think we are a point of difference in that respect. Our clients love it. Unfortunately, they love coming to our sites, which is great, but they also spend a lot of time on our sites too when we may not want them there. But it's just great. And selfishly, we've got a really great team. Our sites are run really well, really respectfully. So it's been a great experience so far.
This podcast today is effectively going to be myself and you talking about alcohol in construction. You are obviously in the contractor environment. You're sort of in eating, living and breathing construction. I'm more focused on resourcing for the construction sector. And so with both, with similar sort of age group, you've decided to go down a route where quit alcohol. I've, from November last year, decided to take a break from alcohol. And, as long as the more time goes on, the more I'm interested in completely, getting rid of it altogether. So tell me, Rob, why you decided to quit alcohol.
Yeah, so I I'm 35 at the time. I'd probably drank alcohol as a standard country Victorian or any, Australian growing up. Like you start drinking at 15, 16. So I mean, 20 years I'd drank for, once a week at least, the whole time. The only period of time I would stop was for a powerlifting competition. I'd stop for 8 weeks, ironically, because I get all the benefits of not drinking. But then as soon as the competition was over, I'd get back on the booze. So yeah, and especially it was around the same time as I was starting Day One as well. And I kind of felt like I had no choice, but I kind of figured I need to be present for my team and my clients at all times. And I don't think that going for long lunches and dinners with clients or friends really bodes well for someone that needs to be up at 6 a.m. to, open side or to be there for the team. So yeah, I've been listening to podcasts as well. I was traveling around Australia doing 19-hour stints. So podcasts were the way to go. So listen to a number of podcasts, which I can share later, that really helped me decide, I guess, that I wanted to take some time off. It wasn't forever when I first decided. It was going to be maybe a month. And then a week later, I decided this is pretty great. Let's try for the end of the year, and then let's try 12 months. And then within probably 3 months of stopping, I just decided I wasn't in it anymore at all. Like I'd kind of ran the data and figured out, all the pros and cons. And once I made that decision, it was like a weight kind of lifted off my shoulders, and I haven't really looked back, to be honest. So yeah,
it's really interesting because I've got a similar story as well. Alcohol is it's like a love-hate relationship with myself. It's like don't really get anything. I've never really gotten anything from it. I think in my 20s, it's good as maybe like a bit of Dutch courage, a bit of a supporting act, a bit of going out with the boys, maybe, doing what you do when you're in your 20s, you're partying, you're living it up, you're, for me, chasing girls, all that sort of stuff that you do when you're that age. But then as time goes on, you find a partner, you get married, you start to settle, you start to go, what, this is literally having no benefits to this at all. It's just all negative,
Yeah.
And, I moved to Australia in 2019 and I found myself, I think, and maybe my I guess excuse to this was always it's really hot in Brisbane. So when I was drinking pints of beer, I felt like I was getting more drunk quicker, and I was like,
Yeah.
this is the first time in my life I feel sloppy, and
Yeah. Right.
that was just not a good look, It was, and I think at that point I was about 28 and 30, coming 33 now. Over the last 5 years, I've just had this sort of love hate, well, mostly hate relationship with it,
Yeah.
And over time, it takes more than it gives, and it's just like, what's the point? Did you have something like that?
No, it's funny. I never hated alcohol or had a bad experience with it. Wasn't so much a badge of honor, but like I could put away so many drinks. It wasn't funny. And I was, I don't recall ever saying things that I shouldn't say or doing things I really shouldn't be doing. But I was almost always the last one there, at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever it was, which is never a good thing. And the next day was just horrendous. Like I just didn't want to do anything. So for me, I think the worst part was just losing all that time and, to a degree, money as well. Like it's quite expensive to keep that up. So yeah, but what I noticed was the type of beer that I was gravitating towards, the ones that tasted great were always the higher percentage ones, like 8% IPAs. And I just found like I didn't really enjoy light beers or mid strengths. I always preferred the heavier ones. And, then I'd start having one or two at night every second day. And that's when I started questioning it. Like, it's not, obviously I'm becoming not dependent on it, but becoming just, becoming a way of life now. And I just really didn't like that. Like, I don't think anyone should be controlled by anything. And I think alcohol is probably the worst thing to be controlled by. And yeah, so I guess I just noticed my behavior was not great from that point of view, just the higher percentages. And then I'd be out for, a day after drinking that much. So yeah, that's probably, what my take on it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I started to get like, I would never sleep well when I drank, so maybe it was because I was drinking a lot of beer. Maybe there's a lot of sugar involved, or whatever's involved in how a beer is made. So I'd sleep terribly, and then I've also got this terrible ability to be sick. I actually get vomit effectively when I'm drunk. So that would happen pretty much every time I was drinking. And then, it wasn't one day for me from a hangover. It was like, honestly, I drank on a Friday, I probably wouldn't start to feel right again until about Tuesday,
Yeah, right.
And so when you look at the days you lose, it just doesn't make any sense,
Have you got kids, Mick? Do you mind me asking?
No, and I can just imagine what it would be like with kids.
I know. I don't have kids either. And I just couldn't imagine fitting kids into the equation if I was drinking as much as I used to. I don't know how some people do it.
I used to, every Wednesday, I used to meet this guy who I used to work with, and he had 4 kids. And Wednesdays was his day that he could go out to get pissed because he had his nanny sort of work later or something like that. And I just don't know how he would put away like a volume of drink. And the next day I was always like, how do you operate? Like how do you have 4 kids running around and still like how do you get to work and all of that sort of stuff? So the health benefits for me have been great. Have you noticed any sort of change in your sort of health from sleeping point of view, anything like that?
Yeah, definitely sleep, and probably anxiousness as well, I guess. Like I definitely feel like I handle issues and situations at, my work life way better. Like, I've had people say to me, oh, what if you have a shit day at work, you need to go home and have a beer? I'm like, well, then I can't really work through the problem I've got, right? Like the alcohol definitely numbs it and makes it, you feel like it goes away, but the problem actually doesn't go away. Whereas if you're sober and you're always thinking clearly, I think you can have that time to resolve it. So I've got a bit of a curveball for you because I don't know how to reconcile this in my mind. When you were talking about that guy putting away a whole bunch of beers, I smiled and I felt myself like smile. Like I still get excited sometimes talking about my, old war stories or drinking. And I know another mate of mine who doesn't drink and he gets pretty excited about talking about it. But like, we'd never go back there. But like, I can feel the joy that I had when it was happening in the moment. Like I can feel like why, when you're there, you're at the pub or whatever, and you're having a whole bunch of fun and you just don't want it to stop. You're oblivious, like that what's going to come the next day, but you just don't care in the moment. And I think that's what alcohol does to you, right? Like it just creates this illusion of a good time, and it hides all the bad stuff, I guess, like all the bad thoughts and feelings. And your aches and pains go away because alcohol is an anesthetic. So of course, like you don't feel that bung knee anymore. You could fall down the stairs just about and get up and you'll be fine. But I don't know how to reconcile that because I don't know. I guess it's just something I have to deal with, like, just thinking about the good old days. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that's why some people go back to it. Do you know what I mean? Like they relapse or they just need that feeling again because you don't really, unfortunately, when you don't drink, you don't get that high. You don't get that high of a good time anymore. It's more plateaued, I guess. And I think a lot of people do talk about this in the professional realm. Like when you drink a lot, your body gets used to this high all the time, but the lows are low. And when you're not drinking, you're more plateaued and you're a bit more leveled. So I
think it's weird. So it's like, if I look back now and go, the best times in my life, yes, I was drinking, right? However, not the best, as an example, when I met my wife, I was out, I was at the bar and all that sort of stuff, and different times and these hilarious moments that happen and as we call it in Ireland, crack, the crack that you're having in a pub, it's hard to replicate. And those moments are like amazing. But then at the same time, it was a mixture of so many different things that came into that moment, so it's where I am in my life. It's maybe it was I decided to travel to the other side of the world, so everything feels so much more exciting. You're putting yourself out there to meet people. Alcohol is a bit of like a lubricant that gives you that sort of Dutch courage to some extent. And then when you look at all of that, you go, what an amazing time that was. But the alcohol may have added 20% to that situation, but there was 80% of other factors that made up for that situation at the same time, you know? And so when I look at, you don't have these like highs, but you don't have these lows either, you know? So the lows for me were becoming more frequent of like the last drink that I had, I was in Sydney and it was at a festival. Like I wanted to go, I'm a big fan of dance music, and there was a dance festival on in Sydney, and I wanted to go see this group play. And so I started drinking at about, I don't know, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I get to the festival and I'm drunk and I'm carrying, you know, like 4 Jim Beams or something like that. And I'm like, I got there and I missed the group that I wanted to see because I was drunk, you know? And then I was like, this is so annoying. This is so frustrating. And then I ended up leaving early, getting a taxi, and I was 45 minutes outside, you know, where my hotel was. And I was so close to being sick in the taxi. I get out of the taxi at the hotel, I'm being sick. And then my wife was waiting for me. She was in the hotel room. She looked at me, she's like, "What, you weren't drinking tonight?" And I'm like, you know, because I had said I'm not going to drink. It's really hard to replicate these moments in our lives, you know? And I don't think that if I was in a future moment that I wouldn't have the same fun by not drinking, but it's just hard to replicate moments, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think, you know, I probably have thought about this a little bit more than I said, but what I notice now and what I enjoy most is probably just remembering the moments that are the best. Like, you know, like some of the best nights I've had or the best events I've been to, God, I can't remember half the bloody night because, you know, you're pissed and you don't really, that's one of the first things that goes. Like you don't, even after 2 beers, like scientifically they've proven that you start not remembering it. And in fact, it's not the case that you're not remembering it. Your brain, the part of your brain that takes the memory in the first place stops working. So you actually will never, ever get those memories back because your brain actually never took the memories in the first place. That's why, like, when people say, "Oh, do you remember this?" Like, you actually will never, it'll be up to them to tell you what happened because you have no idea what happened that night or, you know, certain events. So, that's probably another big reason for me choosing. I just didn't want that to happen again. Like I still go to events. I'm still out till 1, 2 in the morning. It's probably a little bit tougher now, but I remember everything and I enjoy myself a lot more. And I know that there's people I'm with that just won't remember the last hour, you know, that we've been there. So, And what were your expectations going into not drinking, and, you know, what have you actually found? Like, you know, I guess health's been a benefit to you. Have you found any other benefits to stopping?
Right, guys, so I'm absolutely pumped to say the Takeoff podcast is proud to be sponsored by RIB Software, the company behind some of the leading estimating software in the entire planet, including Costex, Candy, CX, and more. So firstly, if you didn't know, RIB are a powerhouse at providing innovative software solutions to the construction and engineering markets. They have over 500,000 users globally and are known universally as a solution provider for your entire project lifecycle, from planning to construction and beyond. RIB solutions help to ultimately connect people, processes, and data, so your project comes within budget, on time, and to the quality desired, all whilst reducing your business's carbon footprint. All this stuff matters, and RIB has the solutions. So if you're interested in finding out more, get on over to rib-software.com, reach out to your local team and quote Takeoff Podcast. For every listener who buys a subscription of RIB Costex, they will provide 1 free online training course. Okay, guys, back to the episode. So health was a big one for me. So last year, I had asthma when I was a child, and it's never really come back, but last year I had 4 or 5 different chest infections, right? And they kept coming back to the point where the doctor wasn't going to give me any more penicillin because he's like, you keep getting these, you know, and they're thinking I'm, you know, using it as an excuse to get drugs or something like that. But what I noticed what was happening was I was drinking, but I was never a casual drinker. So I've always been a binge drinker where I would not drink for so long, and then I'd maybe go, I'm going to drink that night and I'm going to have a big one, right? And so I'd drink maybe from, say, I don't know, 12 o'clock right through to 2 o'clock in the morning or something. So that's 14 hours of drinking. And so when you actually think of that, when you're in the moment, it doesn't feel like that long. But when you actually think it's 14 hours of drinking alcohol, like it's nuts, insane. And so I would get drunk and I have really bad hangovers, and then my immune system would be really low, and then I would constantly catch these like colds and flus, and then the colds and flus would then knock me out for like a week after that. So I've since I stopped drinking, I haven't been sick once, literally not once. Wow. So that's nearly like 6 months of not being sick. I know that doesn't sound like much, but when you compare it to what was happening, it's pretty remarkable. Then I've started to like get a bit of the consistency that I've found in going to the gym, because I'm never hungover, is incredible. So I would go to the gym, say 4 or 5 times a week, right? But then I would get drunk, then I would have a big night out, and then I'd get these periods of sickness, and then so you'd miss 2-3 weeks, or you miss 2 weeks because you're sick and you're hungover and all that sort of stuff. And then you go back once or twice, and it was never consistent. So this like consistency has been incredible, of just banging it out constantly. That's been amazing. And then it's the clarity, like you don't have these sort of like, you're always aware, you're always, you're always sober, so you're not having these like days or weeks where you're like thinking about not being hungover or wishing you were not hungover. You're just not hungover, and so,
which you being a business owner is just critical, right? Like, because you're always looking for the next opportunity, the next strategy, the next thing. You're dealing with problems that are levels above, a typical employee, for instance. You've got a group of people that rely on you. Like, that's it's the secret weapon, I think, to being successful nowadays is. What I've found is not drinking. Like, the clarity is the number one thing, right? Like, you can always make decisions with clarity, 100%. And in the moment.
Yeah, I like without a doubt. And if you say, for example, you would drink every week, right? And so say you drink on a Saturday night and you don't really feel your best on a Monday, and you're doing that for every week. That's 52 days of the year you're unproductive. Yeah. That's nearly 2 months of non-productivity just by that one day you're not feeling great, Yeah. And so I just don't have that anymore. So it's Monday to Friday. It's easy. Now sometimes I'll hear, as I said to you, I like dance music. So maybe on a Friday, you're cruising home, sun's coming down, and you hear, it's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, it sounds
you feel
good.
It in your bones. Yeah.
You feel it in your bones. But I know now that it's just like, that's the excitement in me. But I know, one, first drink, if I did it, I'd be so pissed off myself. Two, I just know that it goes, like, that buzz goes away fairly quickly. Yeah. And I think you can still get a similar buzz, but in a different way, Yeah. So I go to the sauna like 4 or 5 times a week now, and I get a real good buzz from the sauna, but also from the people in the sauna. So it's became this like a social group nearly that I would see nearly every day, and you have good crack and you have good banter and you're slagging each other, and it's nearly what you would get in a pub, but you're actually getting the health benefits as well. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I think you made a good point about the first drink. That's when it all goes downhill straight away. And people don't give alcohol enough credit for doing what it's supposed to do, right? Like, as soon as it hits you, it only takes 15 minutes to get into the blood and then make you feel good. And unfortunately for a lot of people, the person that's had no drinks is a lot smarter and a lot braver than the person that's had one drink. Because once you've had one, like, what's one more? And then the person that's had 2 drinks is like, well, what's one more? And then the third person probably can't. The third drink person just doesn't care anymore. So that's why I kind of decided as well. Like, moderation isn't really a thing for me, especially, and it's probably the same for a lot of other people, because I just don't see the point in having just one. Like, and you're a classic binge drinker, so you're probably even more in favor of that. You'd rather just blow the wheels off, have 10, and make it worthwhile if you're going to drink.
Exactly. Like, I've never been this person who would go home and have a whiskey, at night or something like that. it was always for me. It's like, I'm gonna drink.
Yeah.
It's like I'm gonna drink. But how do you feel about when like it's quite weird because when you tell someone you don't drink, they automatically go, "Oh, he must be an alcoholic," or there's something wrong with him, or like there's this
Yeah.
conception that you're an alcoholic. I know I'm not an alcoholic because I know I can go for
Yeah.
so long and I just don't need a drink, but I
Yeah.
just don't like the benefits or I just don't like what
Yeah.
I get when I drink. So
Yeah.
what's your feeling on that?
Oh, look, deep down, I just kind of worry that the reason why they're asking or the need to ask is even a thing, right? Like, why do you
Mm,
need to justify that you don't drink this, poison, this alcohol? Like,
yeah.
I sometimes, I really think about my answer depending on the person that's asking it.
Mm,
If it's someone reasonably close or whatever, it'll be different to someone that I've just met, I guess. But I've kind of just decided it doesn't matter. Like I just tell them I'm just not interested, don't drink for these reasons or whatever. But yeah, I mean, some people are waiting for that gotcha moment where, oh, you are an alcohol or you're different to me because that's what you're doing. Like when that question gets asked, it's pretty loaded, right? Like you're at a bar or whatever. Because I still go to bars and pubs and stuff, and I just drink them, lime and soda
mm,
water. Um, which is a top tip, by the way. Like if you're drinking that, no one actually knows what you're drinking, which is great. And they're
yeah.
delicious. So, people will ask, and it's really hard to not, it's not judgmental. It's such a loaded question because some people I've noticed when I'm talking to someone, they will slow down their drinking 100%. Like they'll nurse the beer or the drink or whatever for
Mm,
half an hour I'm with them or 2 hours. And then they kind of just, I don't know, they definitely feel like they're almost glad that they're talking to someone because they've been, it's almost, I think people think about it from time to time. They've had a crap weekend out over the last month. Something's happened to them. It's always in the back of people's minds. So
mm,
it does open the discussion up sometimes. But I think the biggest one for me is, so like we take clients out for lunches quite often, maybe once or twice a week. And the look of relief on the client's face when I say I'm just drinking lime and soda is so great. Like they just like, oh, I thought it was a long lunch. I thought I was going to have to sit here and drink wine for 4 hours or,
yeah,
now
yeah.
like you can see the relief in their face and
Yeah,
their
that's
body, their
cool.
whole mood changes. And they're like, oh, this is great. I can actually go to my 3 o'clock now. I don't have to cancel it.
Yeah.
Often still cancel. Like we're still going along, but we're not pissed while we're doing it. Like I think that's really cool to see. Like, you know, I've been taken out by subbies as well. And, I order my soda water and they're like, oh, you're not drinking? I said, no, I don't drink. And they go, oh, I don't actually drink either. I don't like drinking. So
Mm,
they're relieved that, like, it's this stigma, right? This pressure on groups of people to come together and just get shit faced. Like, once you take that away, that option away from people, they actually jump on it straight away. They're like, oh, great, I don't need to drink. I don't have to sit here and, you know, get a bottle of wine and think about who else is going to drink. And don't get me wrong, like I don't mind if people still drink at our table. I've noticed that, being a bit more progressive and leading by example that we're choosing not to, or I'm choosing not to, it actually allows people to not drink, which, in our society is craziness sometimes. Like that most people don't get that option.
yeah.
Some of our events that we go to, the property council and other venues and stuff, probably get crucified for saying this, but sometimes I feel like they're just alcohol distribution events. They're not really for the lobbying or what we're trying to achieve. Like
Yeah.
you're just dishing out alcohol the whole time. Like, I went to another event that they didn't even have, like the Alc Free option was just water. You're like, God, okay, I'm just going to sit here and drink water the whole time. Like, I think that's a big thing too. Like trying to convince some venues and some event holders to actually support people that don't want to drink is really important for the cause as well. So,
No, I agree. I agree. I think, construction has long been sort of surrounded by drink, and it's just like as a social thing. It's like coming together to, it's like break bread and have a drink and calm, sort of calm ourselves and just relax and get people together. But I'm actually recruiting for a lot more businesses now that are saying we do um, activities that don't involve drink. So it might be go karting, or it might be going
yeah,
to it might be getting another business into their business and just sharing ideas and maybe having a big lunch, but it'll be, maybe having big, platters and that sort of thing, but doing things that don't evolve around drink. Because I think, you look at Australia, it's hard to point out what an Australian is. Like, what does an Australian look like? I mean, I don't know. It's every corner of the world. And I've seen people who might be coming from like a Muslim background and don't drink. And so what are you going to do? Leave them out, and say, hey, we're drinking. So, that's unfair, So I think we're starting to see a small shift within the industry towards being more inclusive. And I think that's because what you're doing, Rob, being more inclusive of women coming into the industry. And I mean, not every woman wants to go out and get drunk around a bunch of men,
No,
I mean,
that's right.
That's something that I mean, as a husband, like, I would say, I wouldn't be comfortable with that as well, So I think we've just got to look at different ways of embracing building culture without alcohol. Guys, I'm interrupting this podcast today to give you some information as to what I actually do every single day. So I own and operate a business called Get In Executive Recruitment. We're a specialist boutique recruitment company, and we specialize purely in the pre-construction and commercial construction markets globally. We're really well known and respected for our work in estimating, cost management, quantity surveying, and contract administration. Because we're hyper niche, we don't have millions of candidates. We don't really even have thousands, but more times than not, we have the right candidate for the right job at the right time. Unlike a lot of recruitment agents out there, we are super experienced in what we do. We understand the market, we understand what makes our clients tick, and our candidates tick too. Each and every single assignment we work on undergoes an extensive executive search process. It's robust and it works 100% of the time. We've also got a team of 5 researchers who map our markets out globally within our niche. They're amazing. They allow us to work fast, which saves our clients time and money too. So if you're interested in our process, drop us a message. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, I think but for us, I mean, I run the business and I've decided not to drink alcohol, but we promote that we don't expect our people to drink as part of work, like life culture. Like, we don't expect you to do it. So we don't pay, if we go out for a team lunch or a client lunch or whatever, we don't pay for employee alcohol beverages. We just choose not to. But it's so easy because our team doesn't really drink at all. Like, they know that there's no pressure to. So all of a sudden, I don't have to get pissed every Friday afternoon, with the boss or whatever. So I think, I think bringing, we've kind of got Alc Free Life, what we're trying to do, we also want to do with business. So we're looking at booze-free business as a bit of a platform. So, encouraging business owners and managers and leaders to come up with ways to encourage events, like you said, that don't revolve around alcohol. And, your BDMs don't need to go out and take your clients and do long lunches. Like, there's other ways and other strategies to do it. What I would say, though, is one of the biggest things that's helped me over the last year has been a quote by Scott O'Halloran. He's a TikToker. I think he's the brother, or I don't know what the O'Halloran brothers or something like that. They're TikTok Aussie guys. He's sober, and you wouldn't know by looking at them. Like, it's just crazy the stuff he does. But he come out and said that he's sober, and the biggest thing that helped him was he still drinks, but he doesn't drink alcohol. So, like, if you took out just the alcohol out of any situation, most situations don't really change, right? Like, you're still at the pub, you're still drinking, you're still having fun, like, you still want to be in the moment, but you're just not drunk or drinking alcohol. So that's what I do. Like, I will go to the long lunches and I'll go to the events and I'll be there, for 8 hours or whatever it is. And I just don't drink alcohol. So if you just take that out, then nothing's really different except the benefits, right? Like, I remember everything. I probably don't say things that you shouldn't say, and I love it. Like, I just have felt so much benefit, and that motto alone has really helped as well, because that's probably one of the things that people do struggle with is like, I'm going to be boring now, or seen as the boring person. Well, not really. Like, if you still put yourself out there, it gets easier, 100%. Yeah. It's going to be hard for the first month or two. You'll probably get sick of your friend repeating themselves after the 10th time, whether they're drunk and you're not, but you just get used to it, and yeah, you probably do leave a little bit earlier because everyone's so loud and, the alcohol's not numbing that. But yeah, I don't know if anyone's listening out there. That's something that that's really helped me. Just, I still drink, just not alcohol.
Yeah, well, that's something that I've purposely put myself into, like events that I probably would have shied away from the other times I've maybe tried to stop drinking because I would maybe not have went to the bar or not have went to the barbecue or something like that, and so I've purposely put myself into those events, but with an
Yeah,
alcohol free beer or with a ginger beer or something like that, to
yeah,
prove I was like to proving to myself, but also to my friends that yeah, you're not going to lose me. I'm actually
yeah,
going to be here taking the piss out of you, making fun of, just doing what mates do, and
yeah,
having that banter, And then there's been a couple of times, I've had an alcohol free beer in my hand, and then when you're holding it, you wouldn't know the difference. And so, and then some of the guys would go, "Is that an alcohol free beer?" But maybe after like 2 hours, and I'm like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Jesus, you're doing well, aren't you?" It's like I didn't even know the difference, And
yeah,
the difference
yeah,
is, yeah, I'm slipping off at 10:30, 11 o'clock
yeah,
or something like that, while you're
yeah,
wrecked the next day, and I'm going to the
yeah,
gym,
yeah,
and I feel great,
yeah,
and that's been the beauty of it is that still being able to do things, having my wits about me, not
yeah,
being hungover, being able to look at the situation and going like, I'm sober here. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
I know what I'm saying. I'm not making a fool of myself, kind of thing. Not I'm
yeah,
not I'm not going to be sick. So that to me has been amazing.
yeah,
But one of the things I wanted to ask you, Rob, is that some people will be listening to us going, you know what, I'm keen to do something similar. What sort of
yeah,
advice would you have for someone thinking
yeah.
that?
It depends. You need to want to do it yourself. Like I think, it's it's really hard uh to do it unless you've convinced yourself you're ready to do it, right? And you probably went through the same thing. Like I tried drinking non-alcoholic beers on probably two different occasions, and obviously I realized it was nice, but then in the same night I'd go to regular beer, and then I'd
Yeah.
be like, oh well, that was silly. What even bother doing that for? So it probably took me a month of courage, I guess, just to try and do it. And you're not going to succeed unless you've made up your own mind. And the way I made up my own mind was being educated, and that was through various podcasts. 28 and Sober by Cooper Chapman. He did 12 months off and he reported in every week. And this guy's like professional surfer. His mates are all DJs. Like he's going out getting invites to the most amazing events you'd ever hear of. And he's just there sober, like loving life.
Mm.
The How I Quit Alcohol by Danny Carr. So he's married to a big Australian rock star and they both are sober. And he talks
Mm.
about her journey. But then the book that I read that really did it for me is Alcohol Explained by William Porter. So he goes into the data, I guess, and the actual facts of what alcohol does. And I think you really need to understand it, but you can't listen to it if you're not ready for it either, because you don't really look at alcohol the same, I feel like, because of what it does to you and stuff like that. If you're female, there's probably a different book, which is a bit of a different take, called The Naked Mind, by Annie Grace. It's similar to Alcohol Explained as a factual, but it's probably from a different perspective, for women. And then What Alcohol Does to Your Body by Andrew Huberman. I don't know if you've seen that video on
Yeah.
YouTube. It's amazing. It's about an hour, but similar to the books, it's very factual and it's delivered in a great, in a great way. Andrew Huberman's amazing. Most people have probably heard him before. But he does it in a neutral fashion. Like I think he still drinks occasionally and, he understands that it's, okay, I guess, to a degree. But yeah, I would say being educated is the main step because anecdotes don't really that much, I
Yeah.
don't think. It needs to come within. You need to have your own reason for doing it. So that would be my advice. Just get educated. Our website, Alc Free Life's got some free resources, just books, and we link to all this stuff as well. And one last podcast I'll plug is um, Effing Sober,
Mm-hmm.
the first 90 days. I don't know if you've heard that one before, but it's like a comedy, it's like a non-fiction comedy about this girl who the very similar to us. Like I think a lot of people will resonate with it. Like just alcohol's the standard. You just do it because everyone else is doing it. Like you can't imagine a life without it. And she goes through AA and all that sort of stuff. It's a bit comedy. It's actually quite funny. So yeah, I think just educating yourself on what alcohol is and then finding your own reason to stop is really powerful. The other question I had for you was we were talking earlier, and we've realised that we both stopped drinking in November. And this being a podcast, it lives forever. Yeah. So people might be listening in November thinking, well, do we, I can't do it because Christmas is here and then New Year's Eve. What am I going to do? Like, what was your experience with, putting over the holiday season or the silly season?
Before you go today, guys, I'm just going to ask you to do one thing. Can you please go to Apple right now or Spotify right now and just give us those 5 stars? Hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference you wouldn't believe. The whole idea of this show is to inspire, educate, and motivate our listeners. And we can only do that if we're getting the best guests. The best guests want to see data. They want to see information. They want to see how many listeners that we get. And so all of this stuff is really, really important. So if you can just literally go and do that today, if you enjoy the show, just go and hit that 5-star button. It makes such a difference. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We're going to continue to push this out there every Monday. So if you can, hit that 5-star button. And if you can't, even share it with a friend. Go on to WhatsApp, flick it on to your crew. Guys, thank you so much for listening. On to next week.